For me, the unconscious mind is the seedbed of the imagination. And the Water Theatre, much in the same way as did The Chemical Wedding, began with a dream that I had many years ago. In this dream, I was back up north where I grew up. It was a Sunday morning. I knew because I could smell the Yorkshire puddings and the roasts baking on the air, and I knew my mother was back at home waiting to lift the roast. And my dad and I were doing what the men did in those days, going around from pub to pub drinking on a Sunday morning, until I suddenly realised that he was dead, and I was dragging his dead body around with me from pub to pub while my mum was stuck back at home getting our meal ready. And it struck me as a tremendously powerful image of an individual, i.e. me, and possibly also of a culture, that of certainly Northern England manhood at that time, still very much in the grip of a worn-out patriarchal tradition of relating and thinking, of generally being in the world. And it set me puzzling over how I dealt with this, and one of my ways of dealing with important dreams is to try to write about them. So out of that dream came the idea for a story of two young men, both of whom are in difficulties with their fathers, and both of whom, in their different ways, are looking for different, newer, perhaps larger ways of being men than their fathers were. The situation at the opening of the book is that Martin, at that point, is now in his late 50s. He is a veteran foreign correspondent who has had to deal with many wars during the course of his career, and he has just returned from shooting a documentary about a calamitous civil war that's happened in a West African country, which is called Equatoria, but which he first came across as a much younger man when it was still British Equatorial West Africa. And at the beginning of the novel, Martin has just come back, this is 30 years later, has just come back from the disaster that has subsequently emerged out of the history of that country. He has been summoned back to the house of, I should say the name of the Brigshaw family, Hal Brigshaw, son Adam Brigshaw, and his daughter Marina Brigshaw. He's been summoned back by Hal to High Sugden because Hal's son and daughter, Adam and Marina, have been disaffected from him for many years, and he has just had a stroke, and he wants to see Martin to try to persuade him to go to Italy and persuade his disaffected son and daughter, Adam and Marina, to come back and see him before he dies. This is a difficult task that Martin is given because he himself was party to the conflict which had blown the family apart 30 years earlier. Well, yes, the mystical mind is important, but I think there's generally a misunderstanding of what mysticism is about in our culture. We live in such a rationalist, positive culture that people have actually, they think of mysticism as something rather strange and spooky and eerie in a way. In fact, the origin of the word means healing. They're rites that heal wounds in people, deep wounds to the soul, spiritual wounds. And that's what I'm interested in doing now, is writing the kind of novel which, by unfolding its narrative in a hopefully entertaining way, will take the central character on a journey by which the ego-based life which he has been living gets called profoundly into question. That ego is submitted to ordeals which gradually break it down, and in the course of this he's transformed into a person who has a much larger sense of his own soul. We tend to manage our lives from the penthouse flat up here on the top story, where everything is kept carefully under control. And this kind of thing takes people into areas which are beyond their comfort zone. And so I think the novel is actually quite an intriguing way of doing that, because they're doing it in the comfort of their own homes or their own bed whenever they're reading it. But imaginatively, they're accompanying the characters on this journey. And if the novel works, they have the feeling of being put through it themselves. So hopefully they come out of the book with a larger sense of who they are and what their life is about and what life in general is about than they might have had before they opened the book.